Have yourself a weekend, Minot State Athletics. You've earned it, and so enjoy this time of celebration. Hello and welcome back, Minot sports fans, to episode 20 of season 2 in the Minot Sports Podcast. I'm your host for each and every episode, Cole Clementich, and just been getting lots done with a lot of the local sporting events going on, getting some more games in, getting our interviews, getting our highlights, and that is what we are here for. It's also been very busy with the start of the new semester, so I hope all of that is going well for you guys. Whether you're in college here at Minot State, whether you're at the high schools, Bishop Bryan, Redeemers, Minot High, or if you're just an avid listener that is now onto their day jobs, or their everyday jobs, But whatever your situation is, if you've come in to listen to some of the top-notch Minot sports news and information, we are very glad to have you here. And so welcome back. So like I said, Minot sports fans, this is episode 20 of season 2, the second season of the podcast series. I am back, if you can't tell by the sound quality, I am back in the KMSU studios. It's always good to be back in here. Just the high quality, state-of-the-art technology and all the resources that we have on our hands. Here as broadcasters in the Minot State Broadcasting Department, we're very fortunate. And speaking of the Minot Sports Podcast, the show is brought to you by KMSU TV and Radio. We are very fortunate to use their studios each and every time we get the opportunity to record, unless we are at home with our own mic. But still, we thank them for the connection and being able to utilize all the resources that we have. But you might be asking, what is KMSU TV and Radio? It is the brand name for the Minot State Broadcasting Department, home to the many young and aspiring broadcasting majors here at Minot State University. When touring KMSU, you will see many potential opportunities to be involved. KMSU has live TV, where students can choose to be on-air talent for the weekly campus TV show called MSU Inside Out. KMSU Radio is a live radio feed for students to become DJs. Just sign up for DJ shifts and you're set, and that can be whatever time is available. It's all dictated by the schedule that you have. Again, just sign up for the radio class, COM 285 if you're interested in that. All that and much more, and we hope to see you along the way. On top of that, I'm also proud to announce, I'm sure you guys have seen this on social media by now, but very excited to bring along the podcast some new partnerships. And you've heard of him. If you go to college here at Minot State, you've probably heard of Joshua Strong and all of the great work that he's done in the photography world, specifically in sports photography. Well, Minot sports fans, I am glad to announce a partnership with Joshua Strong Photography. And for all you high schoolers out there, you may know him. For all those that go to Minot High, maybe some, you might know him even if you go to Redeemers or Bishop Bryan. Well, we got not one, but 2 photography partnerships. The other is Peyton Bartsch Photography. So he's a student at Minot High, Joshua a student at Minot State. They will be assisting us with score graphics and sending us photos for the Minot Sports Podcast collection whenever they are needed. And so, just like that, some new partnerships with 2 photographers here in town. Very lucky to have them aboard. And we're just here to promote even more Minot State athletics and activities and the athletes as well. And who knows, we might bring them along for a podcast episode or 2, or maybe even some daily stuff. There's a lot of ideas we can bounce off with this. There's lots of great opportunities out there. And who knows, we could very well get into it in the near future. But for now, we mention them on here. They give us photos and score graphics to show off on social media, give them traction, give our stuff some traction to promote good content for all you guys. So be sure to give them a follow on social media. Go check out their amazing work. All the stuff that they put up is just top-notch. You can also follow the Minot Sports Podcast and our other sponsor, KMSU TV and Radio, on social media. We are both on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Obviously, if you're listening to this on the YouTube, you should know the username by now. If you're subbed and clicked on the bell, you'll catch all the latest in Minot Sports Podcast episodes. You'll see also some more amazing stuff from KMSU TV and radio. Starting off a new semester, I'm also lucky to be back in the COM 475 class. If you don't know what that is, it is the TV production class where we get to be on the live campus TV show, MSU Inside Out. So that is what it is. We're going to be, fingers crossed, doing a basketball series, a real live game day production inside the dome. Think we're aiming to do one of the women's games because of the COVID guidelines. Both the men's and women's cannot play in the same venue. So that should be a lot of fun. And then, of course, we'll also figure out what our positions are going to be for the campus TV show. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys on there watching us in action. But with that said, let's talk some Minot sports here. We're going to mention a little bit about the Minotauros. They've gone through some major roster changes. Even a few of the star players, some of the goal scorers are no longer with the team. We're going to talk MSU women's basketball, their first home series, as well as MSU wrestling. They're just getting underway in their season. We're going to talk some Emergence and the rise of some of the few boys basketball teams at the high school level here in town. One of the girls hockey teams is back in business, talking milestones and recruits as well. But with that said, Minot sports fans, we'll start off with the Minot Minotauros. I'll just quickly mention some of the games that they've played. And it's been a while since we last recorded. It's been very busy doing all the local sports. And with the new semester of school underway, we just got to find time whenever we can to record on here. But it's been a while since we've talked pretty much anything Minot sports related. But for the Minotauros, we'll talk about them first here, some of their recent games. Now, usually they are ones to play teams only in their respective division, and that is the Central Division. That is the same for pretty much most of the other teams around the league, unless, because the geography of the league where some of the teams are stationed at, where some teams might be closer to other teams in different divisions, it just somehow works out that way that they play each other on a regular basis in a non-divisional series. I know some teams in the Central are like that, specifically Aberdeen and Minnesota, I believe. But for the Minot Minotauros this past weekend, one team that they faced, actually I shouldn't say this past weekend, a couple weekends ago. This past weekend, the men's hockey team from MSU played. So it was a couple weekends ago that the Minot Minotauros were in town. And because of some of the struggles with COVID, how it's been running rampant everywhere, the Kenai River Brown Bears from Alaska, they found their way to North Dakota, and they got in a weekend series with the Minot Minotauros. Kenai River is of the Midwest Division. I believe that is the case. I'll have to do more research on that, but I believe they are the Midwest Division, while the Toros are the Central. So a non-divisional series. Just kind of quickly recap that weekend. The Toros lost both games to the Kenai River Brown Bears. Friday, it was 5-2, and then the Saturday, it was 4-1. Pretty much, to summarize the entire weekend, Kenai just outworked and outclassed the Toros. Minot, for the most part, just could not get anything going. There were moments where they did have the effort out there, and they were working to get on the board some more. I thought the effort was there in some moments, and they were pushing, but Kenai was just too good that weekend. And so those were some of the recent games that the Toros just got done with, but it was before that weekend series that some major changes were being made to this team, and Coach Shane Wagner felt it was time to make some more moves. I mentioned last time the Toros managed to get Gabe Temple and Robert Kincaid, one from a Canadian junior team and the other from the Odessa Jackalopes. So it's a player from the same league, a player from a Canadian league. And that was over Christmas break. And now we move back into the new year. Looks like Coach Wagner had some New Year's resolutions to try and improve the team, see what changes he could make. And boy, did he make a lot of them. So I mentioned Gabe Temple and Robert Kincaid. If you can hear the paper, I have it brought up here. I have the Toros roster that was against the Kenai River Brown Bears. This was the Friday roster. And so looking at some of the guys, they added Ethan Schmunk from Powell River, British Columbia, played for the Powell River Kings of the BCHL. One of their draft picks from this past summer, Tyler Kostelecki. I don't know if you guys remember him from the draft day, doing some of the analysis and reporting on who the Toros got. So one of their draft picks is now reported to the team. Although he did not play during the weekend, he's with them, and he might get some game time, and we'll see. We're not quite sure there. Logan Anderson is another one. He actually got some top-line minutes, if I'm not mistaken. In fact, now that I'm looking through here, I actually have the Saturday roster pulled up, and that is exactly the case. Logan Anderson, he was the first-line left winger. He comes from the Des Moines Buccaneers of the USHL. That is the same team that Blaine Warnert came from recently. He is the first-line center. Familiar face was also added to the roster. He actually comes back to us after having played with the Toros last year. If you remember Jay Buckles, he's now back with the team from the Sioux Falls Stampede of the USHL. He got some time there until something happened, and he's now back with the team. And then also some familiar names that might get you to think that those guys are they related to an NHL guy? That is the case. You might ask that, and I will say you were correct, because the Minotauros were very fortunate enough to add the sons of former NHL goaltender Dwayne Rollison, brothers Brett and Ross. Both come from the Powell River Kings of the BCHL, so the same team that Ethan Schmunk played for. But how lucky we are as minded sports fans to have the Minotauros bring in a few guys with some NHL ties to their father that played professional hockey in the NHL for quite a bit, actually. But Ross, a defenseman, Brett, a forward. I was fortunate enough to interview them after one of the games. And so that was a pretty cool experience, and we should be thankful that we're getting some guys that are related to a one-time professional hockey player that has had a long tenure with multiple teams. And, Minot sports fans, these changes, we got some NHL bloodlines with these players. We got, I'd say, some more fantastic skilled guys on the roster now. But the cost of getting these players is big. And so, while these additions were being made, at the same time, the Toros also traded one of the longtime members of the team, Joseph Harginigi. He is no longer with the Toros. He is now a member of the Wichita Falls Warriors. And so I think this was just a move where it was probably best for both sides to part ways, find a trade partner, and hopefully he can succeed with all the potential and skill that he has. Maybe he just needs a change of scenery. Wichita Falls came calling, and the deal was done. I think they got I think it's going to be future considerations that they're going to get in return. I don't know if I caught the full trade completely, but like I said, Joseph Harginigi, no longer with the Toros. He is now with the Wichita Falls Warriors, and we definitely hope for the best for Joseph, because he is a very good, very talented player, and he will be missed in Minot and definitely in the locker room as well. The Minotauros no longer have Declan Duthert, defenseman, and forward Kyle Kukkonen, which was a real bummer. He was doing so well for the team. He solidified himself as a top-line forward, a really fast and skilled goal scorer, can play penalty kill, and really thrived even on defensive situations. He was not only a very skilled offensive player, but he can do it in all situations too. He was a really good player for the Toros, and it was looking like if he stayed with the team, he was going to run away with the team lead in points. He was that good. But unfortunately, he is no longer with the team. I did overhear Ken Oda say that a player did go back to high school, to his respective high school. I don't know if that was him, but I do know that actually I'm pretty sure he came from a high school in Minnesota. And so that very well could have been him going back to play high school hockey. Probably would have to play JV unless, I don't know what the rules are back in his hometown, wherever he's playing at. He could be on varsity, but I don't know the rules. I just know that it is common if players leave for a team at an upper tier, a higher level, that if they decide to come back, they would have to play, obviously, junior varsity, so they wouldn't get the varsity time. They might sit varsity bench, however, but, it is what it is, and it was key for Shane Wagner and the Toros to make these additions to the roster with the guys that are no longer with the team. So it was looking promising. The first game against Kenai River, scoring 2 goals in the first period. They were actually early ones, and I thought, whoa, this team is way different than what we saw in the last home game. But unfortunately, Kenai River was just too good, and they won over Minot and swept the weekend series. But you never know. Could these players pan out to be really good against the Central Division? It was looking good, looking like a good start there. I think they find something in that they can build off of it, and hopefully, we see some more success against teams in the Central Division, which is so tough, so competitive. Like, you look at the standings, I haven't caught up with it as of late, but recently, it's a battle between Minot and Bismarck for second and third right now, and it just looks like Aberdeen's going to run away with first again. Obviously, you don't want to assume that'll be the case, but it's looking promising for them. But for Minot and Bismarck, what were they? Like 8-8, 8-9, and Bismarck's 8-10 or something like that. Now, part of that has to do with the teams that are in the bottom of the division. They haven't played much games. They have not played much due to the COVID guidelines, restrictions, the troubles with COVID, and in their hometowns, whatever it is. It'll be fair game unless a tough decision has to be made by North American Hockey League officers, governors, whatever that may be. What the situation is right now is Aberdeen 1, Minot and Bismarck. It is going to be a good push, a good race for the playoffs. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll see how that turns out. Both Minot and Bismarck right now, they're neck and neck, and it's going to be interesting to see how this turns out. But there you have it for some of the latest Minotauros news and games. Playing a non-divisional opponent, I thought that was pretty cool to finally see a little change of scenery with a new team coming to town instead of the same 4 or 5 teams usually. But, that's just how a regular North American Hockey League season goes. You're supposed to see only your divisional opponents. The geography aspect has an impact on it too, and that's just usually how it goes. But really interesting to see a different team in there. Unfortunately, it was a loss for the Toros on the weekend. Still kind of cool to see a new team here and there. But there you have it for the Toros. Moving on, we are going to talk some MSU women's basketball. They just completed their first home series this past weekend. I have my weekends correct. But MSU women's basketball, I've been saying that they're a team kind of pretty familiar with the men's team, how I usually said they need to work on building a lead and holding it. It was usually that, or they cannot get far behind. Because if they do, and I'll say it for both teams, if they got far behind, usually this was the case last year, that they weren't coming back. There were so many games last year where it was lost at 10 minutes to go in the quarter or half or 5 minutes. And it's hard to build up a comeback of 20, 30 points when the other team just keeps dropping buckets on you. And That's hard to do. And so that was kind of one of my keys for both the men's and women's basketball team, because I thought that was very common last year, both teams finishing out 4-18. There's another reason that both teams are similar. They finish with the same record, ironically, last year. But MSU women's basketball, after starting off 0-4 on the road, let me just pull up the schedule here for the women's basketball team. But yes, 4 games that they began on the road. And those teams, they've actually had some cancellations with St. Cloud State Huskies. But their first 4 games, 2 at Southwest Minnesota State University and at University of Minnesota Duluth. And see what I mean by games that are lost with still a lot of time left? Against University of Minnesota Duluth, 83-65. Yeah, that's pretty close, but again, very hard to mount a comeback. That was on Friday, January 8th. And then 72-57, another loss to the Bulldogs of Duluth. That was on Saturday, January 9th. And then the weekend of New Year's, January 2nd, January 3rd. I'm kind of going backwards here a little bit, starting off the weekend after New Year's, but the Mustangs beat the Beavers 74-62 on that Saturday, and on Sunday, losing 73-58 against the same Mustangs. And then originally their first home series was projected to be January 15th against St. Cloud State. Well, due to COVID, that got canceled, and so they put in Minot State wrestling matches in there, which we will talk about them in a moment. But they finally had their first weekend series at home, and it was against the University of Minnesota Crookston and Golden Eagles. And this series, Minot State absolutely needed. And you talk about the start that they've had to the season, talk about a polar opposite and just a phenomenal performance by this women's basketball team. And how proud the coaches should be, certainly. On Friday, 76-45 win over the Crookston Eagles, and 59-47, another win. So women's basketball sweeping the weekend series against the Golden Eagles. And not only did they build a lead, they put themselves in a position to succeed. And they gave Crookston a taste of their own medicine, where they've lost games with some time left, and now they managed to do it against a team on their own terms. And so that was very good to see for MSU women's basketball. They're now 2-4 on the season. This might get them going. This might really push them. That it might remind them that they have players that can compete, and they can and will just absolutely capitalize on buckets, opportunities. They got some perimeter shooters. They got some players that can throw up a step back jumper here and there. And they have a great cast of teamwork all put in together. And so a great start for this women's basketball team at home. Hopefully this instills some confidence in the team. 2-4, still a lot of season to go. They can very well push, just like the men's team, to push and be one of those teams that can threaten in the North Division of the NSIC. And who knows, maybe that could have just been Crookston's not very good. You also got to look at it that they got 2 wins against an NSIC divisional opponent that, hey, they beat somebody, so they beat someone in their division, and that might lead to some positive repercussions. Let's just say that it gives them confidence to look at something forward to build on as the season goes along. So like I said, yeah, it could have been Crookston is bad, but you also got to look at it as they just swept a team in their division. It's better than nobody. So overall, a good weekend for the women's basketball team, and also a good one for Amber Stavon, named NSIC Women's Basketball Player of the Week for the North Division. Amber was one of the highly touted recruits for this team, and she's living up to the hype. She's getting double-doubles everywhere. She's putting up buckets. She is a great leader for this team. And so very well deserved for Amber, and hopefully this momentum can keep rolling for this MSU women's basketball team. And like I said just a couple minutes ago, MSU Wrestling, they took over one of the weekend slots for the Minot State women's basketball team, a series that was canceled where they were supposed to play the St. Cloud State Huskies, but those didn't happen, and they managed to fit in a wrestling match, and a big one too. And you go to Minot State Wrestling. So far, their season opener at home was against Minnesota State University Mankato. They dropped that one 31-12. And then it was Friday the 15th. They took on in-state rival University of Mary Marauders. Marauders just pulling away at it, winning 20-13. And then recently losing to Northern State 25-13. And so Minot State Wrestling, they're off to an 0-3 start to the season. But like I said, their season opener back against Minnesota State University Mankato. That was on Thursday, January 7th. So right after the first basketball series, once NSIC Athletics came back. I know I said there's a lot of talent on this team, but an 0-3 start, just maybe that the players are tough. Maybe their division's tougher. I think this team is too good to be 0-3, but at the same time, again, there's some hefty competition out there. And I think even for Minot State as a team, if they can get some guys to qualify for nationals, whether in the super regional or I don't know exactly how the full schedule goes just yet, but they've got some talented wrestlers. They've got some guys with experience winning, and maybe it just needs a few matches to figure out what they have and what they need to get going and get more on a rhythm. But like I said, it is tough competition out there in the NSIC wrestling world, so I wouldn't count them out quite yet. There's still opportunities to be great, and I think they might pull one out here or two, because we're seeing some guys that are having some success. Jordan Will, I know one that stands out, a captain, and just really dominant on the mat for the heavyweights. But who knows, maybe this just needs a little bit of time to figure out what this team can do. But again, it's also has to deal with that it's a competitive division and nothing's easy. So we'll see how they fare the rest of the season. They're going to be at the University of Mary, so another top flight matchup with the Marauders coming up here soon. That'll be on Thursday. I'm recording this on Tuesday, the 26th, so should be a lot of fun. Hopefully, that's the one where they can pull out the win, and that builds some good feelings, some confidence that they can get going moving forward and finish strong to end the season. Because this is a short season. 3 matches down and already 3 more to go, not including the Super Regional 5. So it's a quick season, but they might be able to do something with it. So we'll see how they go. And now we're done talking college athletics for a moment here. We're going to move on to high school level, specifically boys basketball. We're going to talk the emergence of Bishop Ryan and Minot High boys basketball. These two teams are just killing it on the court. These teams have solidified themselves as legitimate threats to win the District 12 Region 6 in the WDA, at least threatening right now in the regular season. Playoffs are a whole different animal, but with what they're doing right now in the regular season, they are not letting anything get in their way. For Minot High, we'll talk about them first. For how tough the West Region Division has been these past few years, and then you just see an oddball result in the West Region Tournament where a team like Dickinson, not to say that they're terrible, but they definitely earned their way to the state tournament last year. Unfortunately, Minot was the one that lost out to Dickinson on that spot in the state tournament, but when you would think it would be Bismarck, Jamestown, other teams like Legacy, Mandan, or even Century, when you see someone like Dickinson make it, for how tough the regular season played out for those teams, this goes to show you anything can happen in the West Region Tournament. And so for Minot to be 10-1 through 11 games, first place in the West region, folks, we are past the halfway mark of the season, just barely past the halfway mark of the season. For Minot High to be 10-1 at this point here, this is so crucial. They got Bismarck High and Jamestown both tied at 9-2 right behind them. Bismarck Legacy has emerged as a top flight team at 8-3. Mandan is still good at 8-4. Bismarck Century, they have history of being good. They haven't been at that level this time around in the past, but they're still in the middle. Dickinson that made it to state last year, they're no guarantee out. And of course you have Turtle Lake, St. Mary's, Williston, Watford City, just the bottom feeders. Those are games that Minot should win, but you can tell the teams that I listed off and talking about how even a team like Dickinson made it to the state tournament last year, for Minot High to be at this point where they're at right now, this is so huge. And the records between first and third, heck, even first and fifth, it's a tight race. It is a very tight race. And for Minot to be where they're at right now, it is so crucial that they finish out strong. Because if they can solidify a top spot in the going into the West Region tournament, that is going to be so huge when you face off with teams of lower seeds in the standings now. Granted, you cannot overlook them. You must be careful because you want to play your cards right. You don't want to look down upon your competition. Don't give them any chance. If you can solidify a top spot in the West region by the time the season's over, that is going to be huge in the push for a spot in the state tournament. Just make sure that you're able to show up come tourney time. But right now, through 11 games, Minot High is first in the West region division. That is so huge, folks. And beginning of the year, you could make the argument that they had some question marks. Losing guys like Jackson Gunville, who was a Mr. Basketball candidate. Losing guys like Tucker Olson, Derry Lentz, who were sharpshooters. Easton Larson was lethal in the paint. They were just a sharpshooting team, and now they lost all those guys. We weren't sure of what they were going to be. You could make an argument that we weren't sure of what they were going to be entering this year. And now look at them. 10-1 through 11 games. Head coach Dean Winchesky has done a phenomenal job into creating a game plan for this team and the system that they've built, and to see them follow through with it and have a lot of success. Granted, Bismarck High lost a few games and are behind Minot. The one loss that Minot has was against Bismarck. Besides that, every other team they faced has been no problem for them. They've been winning close games. They've won games by a blowout. They're built for every situation right now. They went from a team full of sharpshooters to lock down defensively, while also having the skill guys to buy in, to lead this team along the way. We're having some great seasons from role players too. This is a huge start for Minot High Magicians basketball. And for the rest of the way, I don't see these records between seed 1 to seed 5. They're not going to loosen up anytime soon. Until they start playing each other, it's going to create just a little bit of separation, but it's not going to loosen up anytime soon. So for Minot High, you just got to keep pushing at it, keep grinding out the wins, keep on with your game plan, stick to it, stick to your identity, and you're going to have success. And it clearly is working so far. It has worked so well in the first half of the season. So really looking forward to seeing how they do. And then moving on to Bishop Ryan. This is also huge for them because, and I guess you can also say the same thing for the RE Deemers boys team, because we also like to talk about them on the show. We do highlights for them. Obviously, Bishop Ryan and RE Deemers, just a few of the Class B teams that are locally here. But Bishop Ryan, 8-1, RE Deemers, 7-3. More specifically, I'm looking at Bishop Ryan here, and given their situation last year, losing in the Region 6 tournament, I can't remember what it was. I think it might have been Drake Animus, but given the situation that Bishop Ryan didn't make it as far as RE Demers did in the Region 6 tournament for a chance to go to the state tournament, this is big for Bishop Ryan, what they're doing right now. Just like Minot High, if you want to solidify a good seeding entering the districts and the regions, do what you're doing right now in the regular season. And if you continue to do that, you're going to have success. And honestly, this might be Bishop Ryan's one chance to do it, given all of the seniors that they have graduating this year. But it's looking like now we still have yet to see both Bishop Ryan and RE Demers play. Because obviously, when that time comes in February, it is going to be a battle. And it's going to tell us who's still up top, and could that give us a foreshadowing of what could potentially happen come playoff season. Bishop Ryan right now is, just like Minot High, dominating everyone they see. They're 3-0 in the districts, 2-0 in the region play, 8-1 overall. Obviously, less games played than Minot High, and even less games played than RE Demers, with the Knights being 7-3. This Lions team plays relentlessly on both sides of the ball. They are electric. In some cases, you could say they can create offense out of nothing. Make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, the one loss came to Shiloh Christian on the road, and it was only by a bucket, only 2 points separated between Bishop Ryan going into overtime with the Skyhawks. So they could have easily had that in the bag. The big question I have is, once it comes down to Bishop Ryan and RE Demers, who's going to take that matchup to try and solidify the top spot in the District 12 Region 6 division? But I'll say this too, Bishop Ryan, with their emergence, they are really emerging right now. They are looking good, and they are making basketball fun to watch. But time will tell once they begin to take on the likes of RE Demers and maybe some other teams in the region that could give them troubles. But I'll keep this in mind. I'll point this out here, folks. Bishop Ryan, just like Minot High, has emerged well as a top contender for their respective divisions. But also, don't count out RE Demers because they are right behind them. But I'm specifically looking at Bishop Ryan for how well they've been playing. So it should be really interesting going into the final games of the regular season, seeing what transpires, seeing how Bishop Ryan and RE Demers will do, and of course Minot High as well. Should be lots of fun. And now we're going to take it back to the rink for Majettes hockey. I've had them dubbed as one of those teams with high expectations to kind of repeat what they did last year in the state tournament, but maybe even go further. At the start of the season, they were, kind of right where you may have expected them to be. It's not terrible, but through their first 5 games, they ended up going 3-2, which, again, it's not terrible. But it was after those games where they really kind of started to pick up some momentum here. A big 7-0 win over Dickinson, 2-1 win over a good team in Devil's Lake, shutting out West Fargo. However, they do have some losses here in the standings, but those are against good teams. Fargo North-South Shanley, 5-1. Losing to Bismarck also 3-1. Bismarck, the defending champs. Another big win against the Firebirds on the road, actually shut them out. But then a 2-1 loss to the Grand Forks Knight Riders. Honestly, you could say that one's a toss-up, which Minot's beat them before. This one's one of those series where if one team wins the first game, the other team could win the next. That's just how evenly matched it is between these two. And then they got Mandan tonight. So the overall body of work for Majettes hockey, they managed to get some wins, but a few losses in there with the team that they have. Maybe you could have made the argument that they should have had one in there, at least the first one against Williston. That was a tough loss in overtime to the Coyotes. But I mean, it is what it is. What else can you do? So Williston just played absolutely bonkers that night. But it wasn't that bad of a start, but this is we're at the point where Majettes hockey, they've got it down pat now. They should be fine the rest of the way. I think with where they're going at currently, with the strides that they made last year and what they've been working on this season, I definitely think that they can push for a higher seed than what they had last year going into the state tournament. Obviously, some tough losses, but those, again, are against good teams. Minus the one loss to Williston, for the most part, they're taking care of business, folks. So they're back in it. And just like for the other teams, hopefully we can see a strong finish from them. And now we are going to move on to some news from Minot State Athletics. Specifically, we're going to be talking Minot State soccer here, as they have just acquired some talent, some help in the recruiting process. And by the way, before I get more into this, I think we're going to be done with the recruiting roll call segment. I'll just report it as it is. I don't want to make too much of a fancy show out of it, but I'll just report it as it is. But joining Minot State Soccer, Shea Taylor, defender from American Fork High School in American Fork, Utah. So that is another recruit to add to the list of new players they will be getting in the next soccer season in the fall of 2021. So there you have it for Minot State Soccer. And then one last thing before we end the show off here. We just want to wish a congratulations to Max Cody, guard for Minot State men's basketball, recording 1,000 points in his career and doing it against the St. Cloud State Huskies, where he recorded 12 points in the game. That actually put him above 1,000 points in his career, but he needed 9. He got 12, and that should just about do it. So once again, a big congratulations to Max Cody, Minot State men's basketball. They're looking pretty good to start the season, so that is all fun and dandy. And Minot sports fans, you just got through another episode of Season 2 with the Minot Sports Podcast. This has been episode number 20. I want to thank you guys once again for listening and everything involved, giving out all the support each and every night. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it greatly. We reached 1 year since starting the Minot Sports Podcast. I believe I mentioned that in the last episode. But January 7th, 2020, it's been over a year now. And to see all the growth being made and to see all you guys supporting, it just means the world to me. So thank you so much. But with that said, that concludes episode 20. Be sure, guys, also to check out KMSU TV and Radio, our sponsor on social media. Check out the Minot Sports Podcast on the same media platforms as KMSU TV and Radio, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We also want to give a big thank you to Peyton Bartsch and Joshua Strong Photography for brand new partnerships in this new semester. We're looking forward to seeing all the work that they put out for us, and just in general for their pages, which you want to go check those out because they are phenomenal. Great work those guys both do. Go check them out. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I know Josh has a Facebook. I'm not sure about Peyton, but you won't want to miss it. They put out great work. And so we thank them for their partnership. Once again, Minot sports fans, that is going to do it. I hope you all have a nice day. Stay safe and healthy out there. Take care. I'll see you guys later, and I'll talk to you in the next one.